I have with me the filmmaker Robert for Vaccine Induced, the
Hello.
story of Sean Muldoon. And it's so crazy because Robert is in Israel right now. He's working on a project and we were exchanging emails and he was like, okay, I'm free for the next 2 hours. Are you free? And I was like, yes. And so what did you do? What were you doing when we were emailing?
They have the most amazing food here, but I was having a burrito because it's just been 2 weeks of the local food. So I ran downstairs. I saw your message, like, okay, I can do it now. So I got out my suitcase, threw my phone on top of it, and I'm sure the lighting is, but
It looks,
it's
I think
finally
it looks
happening.
good.
So at least this is happening. So I think we've been messaging for a while now. So yeah, it's I got Jeff in the background over here. I'm not sure if you can see it, but man,
we can see it. Oh my goodness. So what are you doing in Israel right now? And what time is it over there?
time is somewhere around 8:30. Sorry, 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Okay.
I was filming a documentary on biblical nature. So yeah, it should be
Wow,
out.
that is so cool.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is a ton of responsibility on that one. So it was somewhat helter skelter, but we had a team of skilled people, and it's amazing what a sense of responsibility and God's will and talent, when those all come together, I think we made something that most other people would not have gotten away with anything. So yeah, praise God for that one.
Yes. So, Robert, what inspired you to make this documentary that you're in Israel for? Like, what inspired you to just go to Israel and make this next film? Like, is it a feature film or is it a short? Like,
Well, so the amazing part is for vaccine induced,
yeah,
that one was purely self-funded, 100% self-funded, to
I
the point that
saw your blurb. You took a second mortgage on your house, right?
well, no, I actually I was ready to buy a house,
Yeah.
and I just said, "Hey, I'll take what that would have been and do this instead."
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
yeah, yeah. It's I just I they were gonna start. The whole thing started with I was driving in the car, and they were gonna start vaccinating the children, and I just
Because you're in
had this
Canada. You're in
in
Canada.
Canada,
You're in
and
Canada.
yeah, and the interesting part is that by the time we finished right after they started vaccinating the 6-month-old babies. And there's a lot of, I understand that's a controversial issue, but for myself, it just seemed really wrong.
Well,
Um,
Robert, it's like it's one of those things where people should have the freedom to choose, right? I'm a firm believer in that. And it's like everybody's situations are different. There are some people who've had really bad allergic reactions to just vaccines in general. And there are just, so many people that have pre-existing conditions where it's dangerous for them to do it. And it's just, it's like I am, it's so interesting how my thoughts on this have evolved as more stories like yours has actually come to the surface, because there was a problem with censorship, and that's exactly what, Susan, the filmmaker for Something Ain't Right, she's actually a licensed medical doctor. And just the fact that they're silencing these doctors and nurses from speaking out. And, your documentary also touched upon it as well, where Sean had this, for those who haven't seen it, it's available on demand, the Vaccine Induced. And
totally free. Yeah.
and the thing is, like, it's not one of those stories that should be controversial. Like, this is his personal story, and this is something that has happened to him. It's like it shouldn't be controversial. You know what I mean? It's just like you can't
I, it,
debate with about that.
no, you can't. It was, his story was so perfect for that exact reason. And on top of that, for all the sources that were used in this, we never used Fox News once. We only ever used left leaning or almost entirely left leaning news articles for it. I wanted to make sure that we can reach people who might dismiss it otherwise.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing is, I love that you did that, because I will say that a lot of the people working in Silicon Valley, you know, like for our companies, there were vaccine mandates, as in you need to get this done because we're a government contractor. And if you don't get it done, then you're going to lose your job. Like it, you know, we were there, you know,
Yeah,
there are
100%.
companies that are still implementing that right now. So if, you know, whenever you want to gather in person, you know, it's like you need to have this thing. And it's just been so wild. And you know, it's funny because a lot of people, they just don't want to lose their jobs. Like this is their livelihoods. They have like a mortgage, they have a family, they have kids in college, they have all these things. Like the doctors with like the medical licenses, how are they going to pay for all the things if everything that they've worked towards is going to be taken away, you know? So it's almost like they're bullied into doing something that they don't really want to do, that they feel in their gut is not right.
It's so true. I mean, and if you have children and you're going to lose your house, I mean, is that really a choice? It's not. I mean, sure, you can throw away your entire career, your life's work, and everything, um, but to say that that was a choice and that you had the free will to do that, I don't think that's I think that's a disingenuous argument to make. And then you throw on top of that the fact that injuries are happening and these injuries are being silenced on top of it.
Yes. Why are they being silenced? It's like these are real people that this is affecting. And if anything, if these aren't being silenced and people have the opportunity to see the effects it's having on certain people, that should cause everybody to take a huge step back and reevaluate everything. And I feel like as a civilized society, like, isn't that what we're supposed to do?
You would think so, but perhaps
Right?
it's, I mean, the horrible situation is that Sean to this day still gets asked if it was really by the vaccine, despite the fact that he is one of the very few who has handwritten letters by the Bonnie Henry, the health administrator. He has handwritten letters. He is confirmed. There is no doubt, which is why he was such a great candidate for this documentary. There can be no doubt at all. It is confirmed, and yet he still gets asked if it was really that. Um, there is this social stigma that's been put out there about anyone who even questions if it could have been, and I don't know if that's because people have bought into it so hard that it's hard to make a U-turn, or if it's just the media that's convinced them that this is the way that it is. But
And that makes me so
it's a
sad.
travesty.
That
Yeah, it
makes me
is.
so sad because I mean, the part that really got me when I was watching the documentary was the part where Sean says, you know, before I was training for like a triathlon, you know, I was training for all of this. And now, after this vaccine injury, he had 6 feet of his intestine removed. He can barely walk a 5K. And that broke my heart. I was like, oh my gosh. And the part that, you know, when nurses would come up to him and they themselves, you know, have seen and worked with him firsthand, and they knew that he was perfectly healthy before, right? This was the only thing that was different that had happened to him. And when they asked him about it, they had to do it almost in like a quiet, silenced way. Otherwise, they're afraid of losing their jobs, or they're afraid of, I don't know what they're afraid of. You know what I mean? They're afraid, clearly.
Well, it's so true, and I mean, yeah, it's horrible. I Up in Canada, I've met with a lot of these people, and there are people that have walked away halfway through getting their degrees. There are people who have walked out expecting zero compensation at all. A lot of these people were, well, I don't want to get into a whole different stage, but some of these people were denied EI because not getting the vaccine is choosing not to work instead of actually losing your job. So there was no safety net. The safety net was weaponized. It's
You know what's funny?
yeah,
It's not funny. It's interesting that
yeah,
there were actually a couple filmmakers that were Silicon Valley International Film Festival alumni. They're actually from Canada. And
yeah.
when everything happened, they had pre-existing conditions. They didn't feel comfortable getting vaccinated. And because of everything that was happening, they actually ended up moving away from Canada, and they're actually living in Mexico right now. And
That is
they're in Mexico
that's
right now.
so
They left Canada before they closed the borders and, wouldn't let
that
people
is
in.
That is so interesting because I got caught in that. I actually, I think it was November 28th. I don't remember what it was, but I had 2 weeks and I said, hey, okay, I have 2 weeks. Do I drop everything in my entire life and get on a plane before I can't drive out of the country? I can't
My
sail out of
gosh,
the
you
country. I
know.
can't even walk out of the country. I have 2 weeks to fly if I need to. And I can go to Mexico and just see what happens. And
Mexico. You thought Mexico too. Oh my
that
God.
was it. I was asking friends, where can I go? It was for people that weren't in Canada. I mean, it was strange. It was very, very strange, to the point that, you were somewhat of a leper if you didn't agree with the thought of everyone else.
I
There
saw
was
that
this.
happening within my own company, like the company that, my day job company that I work for. I see it. And it's just like, I see it's so crazy because we work for these tech companies that are so progressive and they're so accepting of everything except for this, and it's like you would
I know.
think that if they truly are liberal, AKA open-minded, like free thinking, you would think that people who are raising these legitimate concerns, you'd think that they'd have compassion towards them, right? And so it's been shocking for me too, because like, it's like this, like, again, I love the company that I work for. I do, but it's just kind of like, and it's not even just my company, current company, it's my former company. It's pretty much all the tech companies that I'm seeing just in the area, and just seeing their reaction to people who won't give access. It's almost like they refer to him as like the other. And I'm kind of like, that's kind of weird. You know what I mean? Like,
And all you have to think about is, what would this be like if the shoe is on the other foot? What happens if there's something that you don't particularly align with? Should individual freedoms not come first? I mean, it's wild. Anyone who looks at history, even a casual glance at history, will see that the people forcing other people to do things are not generally the best people to align yourselves with.
I
Uh,
completely agree with you. So,
yeah.
how did you hear about our festival? How did you hear about, because, when we saw, it's so funny because like, again, it's like, I mentioned this to Susan too, but every time, these controversial, and it's so sad that people some people on the judging panel, like thought that this movie was controversial. I was like, how is this controversial? I really had to like step up, and I had to be like, how is this controversial? This is somebody's real experience. Like, there's no controversy around it.
There is none. It was so this movie was specifically made so that there were no facts stated at all.
Yes.
There is no science, no medicine, no anything. This is intentionally made to be so small of one man's personal experience that is proven to have happened to him, that no one can refute it. That was intentional so that these issues wouldn't pop up, and we can win over the middle, and or at least
Yes.
not even win over the middle, but let the
No,
world know
get
that
them
these
to be like,
people
oh my
exist.
gosh, yes, like reevaluate everything, and maybe like, like change their minds. I know my mind has been changed a lot since the very beginning of this, and it's because of stories like this. So I want to thank you for not buying your house and paying for this movie to be made, like, because, just from this film alone, just from the people that I've shared this film with so far, just from, that judges panel, like we've had a lot of really good discussions because of it. And, like the judges, like, like I really believe that it has, caused them to kind of reevaluate what they thought before about people who aren't vaccinated, So, I mean, I think that that's a huge win.
Oh, well, firstly, thank you for being brave enough to actually show it. A lot of people, I mean,
But
as
that's
soon
so
as you touch
crazy.
on
It's
the
like, it's
subject,
not even a brave thing. It's like a
I
real story, right? But yes, you're
know,
welcome.
I know, because well, what's crazy is, if you do end up watching the movie, or whoever is watching this ends up watching it, I mean, Sean was sitting in the hospital watching the news articles come in as the risk factor changed from what he signed up for. He signed up for a 1 in a million risk. By the time he was not even a quarter of the way, if I remember correctly, through his hospital stay of what was eventually a year, it was down to 1 in 26,000. And they don't even know what the real risk is. I mean, to deny that anyone was hurt is is delusional, and it's a shame that to not acknowledge them, these are people that were injured, and for us to ignore them is wrong.
I completely agree. How did you even find Sean? Like, do you know him? Like, how did that come about? And then you were like, oh my gosh, I need to make a movie about this.
Crazy story. I mean, another God thing for
Yes,
sure.
absolutely.
I was at a freedom rally. I was going to these freedom rallies as the trucker convoy went through because I was unvaccinated, and I was completely excluded from society, along with many other people, and that impacted our jobs and the rest. So I went to a Doctors on Tour, which was a display where doctors would come up and give you the info as they knew it at that point. I ended up sitting next to a quiet man minding his own business. Turned out to be Sean. I didn't know
Wow.
him from a bag of rocks, but because I was sitting next to him and we were what looked like friends, the organizer said, "Oh, well, Sean brought his friend. We're going to ask him to come up and talk now,
Oh
because if he brought a
God.
friend, he must be okay with doing it." I didn't know him from a bag of rocks. I don't know who this guy is, but he tells a story. I go, "Oh, that's an interesting story. It's unfortunate," and he said it so well. He spoke well. Don't think anything more of it. I go back home, nothing happens, and then I go for that drive. They announce on the radio they're going to start doing vaccinating the children, who have the such a small risk factor that
Such a small risk factor.
I mean, infant, like non-existent almost. And I don't know when we started endangering children to protect the rest of us, if that was even a thing at the time. It
Yeah.
seems so evil. Um, so then what happens is I hear that, and I'm struck with a conviction. I never want to speak for God, but it felt as if I was given a mission, something I had to do. And from that moment, it was a timer that was ticking down, that I had to do this before they started getting the children. Um, I then just Google him on Facebook. I message him, and that was the very first day that he had bothered to check his junk mail for 6 months. I
Wow.
just happened to be the top message in his junk
Wow.
mail the first time that he checked, and he agreed. It was meant to be a 5-minute PSA. I sold him on a, "Hey man, 5-minute PSA. We'll put it out to Instagram, Facebook. All we have to do is just let people know that injuries exist," because at the time
Yes.
it wasn't clear that injuries exist. It was this conspiracy, this fallacy, but when I did the first rough draft of just the verbal to get some feedback on it, just a radio edit, we got taken off of YouTube, censored
Oh
misinformation.
gosh.
Yeah, I sent in written letters from our public health administrator of the whole province. I sent in news articles. I sent in everything. They said, "We acknowledge that you sent these. Misinformation. We're not putting you back up." And
Oh my gosh. How is his experience? Like, that's the craziest thing to me. It's just like, this happened to him and he has proof,
yes,
that
proof. He was one of the
proof.
very few. He was one of
How
the
is it
he was
misinformation when
one of
there's
the first.
proof?
Well, that might be a whole different documentary.
You
Uh,
know?
yeah.
So that's how you got connected with Sean. That's incredible. So you made
Crazy.
this film. It
Yes, ma'am.
how has it been doing? Like, when you've submitted, how did you find out about our festival?
Film Freeway. Shout out to Film Freeway. I just went through all of them. Firstly, I went to other documentaries that were kind of, I don't know if were more risk. And I went through all the ones that they had been accepted to, and then after that, I just started shooting in the dark, and anyone that seemed like they might be okay with showing something that um, it's such a shame to call it controversial, because it's really not. But
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
yeah, it's actually it's just really sad how what's something that is proven in writing. The doctors have confirmed it. There's news articles like that. There is no doubt. He is one of the very few that there is a 0% doubt, and still, I was told that I would never work again if I made this. Like, it was
I
wild.
cannot believe that.
Yeah, yeah, it's so thank you for accepting it. I mean, I sent these all off and I didn't expect anyone to actually reply back. So it's you, and
Yes.
yeah, you're the first US one to actually go for it. So
No way. Are you kidding me?
no, no, I'm not.
That's a little sad and very shocking, but I am proud to show this type of film at the festival because again, I think that the beauty of Silicon Valley are people with different perspectives and different thoughts coming together and being able to debate and have a conversation. And I think that when you are intelligent, you don't revert to name calling, you don't revert to belittling somebody. You have conversations, you hear what the other person has to say, you are able to articulately share your thoughts as well. And, it's just hopefully both people walk away from the conversation, with a little bit more knowledge on what somebody else thinks. I feel like that's why Silicon Valley, in my opinion, has, boomed several, like a decade ago. Like that's why there was that boom. And I think that's why it's been so successful, because you get a room of people, you get a room full of people that have different perspectives, that have different ideas, and they're able to work together towards a solution. And it's like the fact that, so, in that sense, I think it makes sense that a film like yours was accepted into our film festival, because I think that people should be having conversations, about this. And I think that people should be having conversations with you because you have heard multiple these stories. Like Sean isn't an anomaly. He's not just the only person who has been injured. It's like you've spoken with people, where you've confirmed that there are other people out there who have been injured, but unfortunately their story isn't able to be heard because of the censorship, because somebody out there is afraid maybe of what that might mean if these stories are true and these people are sane.
It's gonna be that is a really interesting question. There were a lot of people that took these shots, and there was a lot of coercion. And I don't think I'm wrong in saying coercion. Um, there was a lot of pressure put on these people, and a lot of these. When I say these people, I mean there were a lot of really good intentioned people who were trying to do the right thing. Or, I mean, in the case of Sean, he told me in the end, and I think what it is in the documentary. He just wanted to have a drink with his friends at the pub. I mean, when you willfully exclude people from society for 2 years
Yes.
of making them lepers, maybe is the right word, or at least people who are the sick ones, it's it's just wrong, and it's so evil. And I'm really glad that there's other people who care enough to amplify, well, to spread it. Because I mean, even just acknowledging that they exist is, I don't want to be dramatic and say an act of defiance, but it's just nobody who, I mean, in Silicon Valley, you got to be smart to be there. I can't imagine too many of those people that you have to be willfully ignorant and choose not to see if you don't see, because
Well, you know what I will say? I will say that there are people in Silicon Valley who do think the way that you and I think, in the sense that they're open and they don't, if people do things that we don't agree with, like we don't marginalize them and we don't exclude them and make them feel like the other. And the thing is, I think that the important thing is speaking out. And an example I'll give is my husband. He used to work for Salesforce, and he had friends who just had refused to get vaccinated for various reasons, right? He, worked with a lot with engineers. He worked a lot with the sales teams. And because he saw how these people were being treated by their managers, by their peers, and he saw that they were, being like threatened with their jobs. My husband's like, I can't work for a company that is like this. And so he
For him.
he ended up quitting. He quit. And on his exit interview, he specifically said, I am leaving because I do not agree with this vaccine mandate and it goes against my personal values. Like my values, as in the sense that, like, forcing somebody to do something that they don't want to do, that they don't feel comfortable doing. It forces people to not feel comfortable bringing their full self to work. And that's something that, like that company had said. And so I tell you, there were a lot of people that did what he did. And I kid you not, a couple weeks after he left, they reversed the mandate. So now they don't require it at Salesforce. Now, like I said, there are still a lot of companies that do require it, but that I firmly believe that the reason why they backtracked is because there were a lot of people who were working in sales, that were just quitting. And obviously, if you don't have a sales team selling your product, how are you going to make your number? So I just thought that was, I was so proud of him too. I was like, well, what are you going to do? And he was like, oh, it's okay. I'll find something. And he did. But if anything, it's another one of those things where he was, confiding in me and telling me that through this whole experience, it's caused him to just really think about, like, what am I doing to make my own money? Like, how can I be an entrepreneur right now, especially if something like this happens again in the future on a bigger scale, where they literally will threaten your livelihood again? Like, are you going to be okay? Are you going to have the means to support yourself? So, it's like, I know that that's something that he's thinking about right now. That's something that he's like, what can I do? Like, so yeah.
Good for him. No, good for him. I mean, this was able to take place because people just went along with it. I mean, none of this would have happened if everybody was like your husband, and then they had enough of a backbone to just simply say, this will not happen. And that's rough to say, because not everyone's in a position like that. People have got children and households,
Absolutely.
paycheck.
Absolutely.
But if everyone had just said, doing this to other human beings is wrong, it would never have gotten the way that it was. I don't know if it was fear or if it was the media. I don't know what it was, but I do know that these people do exist, and not to acknowledge them is wrong. And
Yes.
and congratulations to your husband for being strong enough and being in a position where he's able to do that. So good for him.
So I have a question for you, Robert. If people want to follow your journey with this documentary that you're filming in Israel right now, they want to follow your career, maybe they themselves have a story, after they saw the documentary, they're like, oh my gosh, like I know somebody, or oh my gosh, like this happened to me. Like, how can people get in touch with you? Where can people find you?
Yes, ma'am. If you go to www.vaccineinduced.com, you can message me there. The documentary is there. I I'm hoping that there are so many stories to tell. I would love to tell the story of Pastor Archer. I mean, there are so many. Yeah, please go to www.vaccineinduced.com and you can message me there if you'd like.
Okay. So that's how you get a hold of Robert. And Robert, how long are you going to be in Israel for?
I fly out tomorrow night, so it's been a long shoot. And yeah, well, that is the crazy thing is I went against every career advice I possibly could get, and I just had a mission. I felt like I had to. I made that documentary, and what everyone was telling me was the worst decision I could ever make turned into the best. I now am working. People have seen it, and they go, "Hey, we need a guy who can do these types of things for us." So this is a paid job. How crazy is that? That I went from losing a job to taking all that to make that particular movie, to now people recognizing that there's talent and skill, and now it's God works in crazy ways. So what was the largest exercise in faith I've ever had? is now leading to abundance. So
Yeah, and he shows up, you take these big
yeah,
risks and then, you literally see God showing up, and that just increases your faith, right?
yeah, it really does. Yeah, it really does. Praise God. Praise
Well,
God.
Robert, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be connected with you now. Now we know how to find you and stay in touch with you. But I look forward to having our audience watch your film, and hopefully that'll spur a lot of conversation, good conversation. And if they want to continue the conversation, they'll reach out to you.
Yes, ma'am. I am so excited. When I got taken off of YouTube, I never thought that I wasn't sure if anybody would ever see it. So it's so incredible to be in film festivals now.
Well, thank you for submitting your film, regardless, even though you're like, maybe they won't accept it. I don't know. Like, thank you
Oh,
for
it's
submitting
great.
it anyway.
Yeah. And thank you for having me. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. And have a safe trip back home, Robert. And again, we look forward to seeing you at our festival next week.
Amazing. Take care, guys. Have a good one.
Bye.